Welcome to Earth's Chronicles, where we explore the mysteries and untold stories of our world. Tonight, we journey back to 1959, to the icy wilderness of the Ural Mountains in Russia, where 9 young adventurers embarked on what would be their final expedition. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident, a story of ambition, fear, and a chilling mystery that remains unsolved to this day. The leader of the group was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute. Igor was known for his determination and leadership skills, qualities that made him the natural leader of this expedition. Alongside him were 8 other students: Zinaida Kolmogorova, a lively and strong-willed young woman; Rustam Slobodin, a calm and introspective man; Lyudmila Dubinina, a passionate and outspoken individual; Yuri Krivonishenko, the joker of the group; Yuri Doroshenko, a brave and resilient adventurer; Alexander Kolovatov, the quiet thinker; Nikolai Thibault Brignoles, an easygoing and friendly soul; and the youngest, Yuri Yudin, who is the most physically vulnerable of the group due to his chronic health issues. They were all experienced hikers, and this was to be their most challenging journey yet, a trek through the snowy wilderness to reach the peak of Otorten. On January 23, 1959, the group set out, full of hope and excitement. They passed through the village of Vizhai, the last inhabited settlement before they ventured into the wilderness. Here, they met with the local Mansi tribe, indigenous people who have lived in the region for centuries. The Mansi warned them of the mountain they intended to climb, calling it Kolatsyakal, or Mountain of the Dead. But the students, undeterred by local legends and driven by their sense of adventure, continued on their path. As they trekked deeper into the forest, they recorded their journey in diaries and photographs. Their entries were filled with joy, laughter, and anticipation, with no hint of the horror that awaited them. The final diary entry, written on February 1st, describes their arrival at the slopes of Kolatsyakal. They pitched their tent on the exposed mountainside, possibly to avoid the dense forest below. As night fell, a heavy snowstorm set in, the wind howling through the trees, and the temperature plummeted. Yet nestled in their tent, the group huddled together for warmth, completely unaware that this would be their last night alive. Imagine it now: the dark, snow-covered mountains, the howling wind, and the thick forest stretching out below them, silent and foreboding. The air is frigid, biting through even the warmest clothing, and the only light comes from the pale moon, occasionally peeking through the clouds. The vast wilderness around them feels both immense and suffocating, a reminder of how small and vulnerable they are in this unforgiving landscape. The hikers settle in for the night, their tent a small beacon of life amidst the desolation. But something else was out there with them, something that watched from the shadows, lurking just beyond the edge of the forest. And as the night wore on, the terror began. At some point in the night, something drove the hikers to cut their way out of the tent from the inside and flee into the snow, half-dressed and barefoot, despite the deadly cold. The sheer terror that must have driven them to abandon their only shelter and run into the pitch-black night is almost unimaginable. What could have inspired such fear? The next morning, the group failed to check in as planned. A rescue team was dispatched, and what they found defied all explanation. The tent was discovered first, half buried in snow, torn open from the inside. The hikers' belongings, boots, jackets, food, were left behind, scattered haphazardly as if abandoned in a panic. Footprints led away from the tent, into the forest, but they were erratic and disordered, as if the group had been fleeing something in a state of utter panic. The first 2 bodies, those of Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, were found near the edge of the forest, beside the remains of a small fire. They were dressed only in their underwear, their hands and feet severely frostbitten. It was clear they had died from exposure, but the story didn't end there. As the search continued, more bodies were discovered. Igor Dyatlov and Zinaida Kolmogorova were found next, not far from the forest edge, in poses that suggested they were trying to return to the tent. Their bodies were found face down in the snow, their hands outstretched towards the camp, as if in a final, desperate attempt to reach safety. Rustam Slobodin was found later with a fractured skull, but no external wounds, an injury that puzzled investigators and added another layer of mystery. But it was the discovery of the last 4 hikers, 2 months later, that deepened the mystery. Their bodies were found in a ravine, under several feet of snow. Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov had suffered horrific injuries. Dubinina and Zolotaryov had crushed ribs, and Thibault-Brignol had a fatal skull fracture. Yet, bizarrely, there were no external wounds. It was as if something had exerted immense pressure on them, something with unimaginable strength, perhaps something or someone that could inflict such damage without leaving a single scratch on the skin. Adding to the eerie nature of the discovery, Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips. But what was even more chilling was that none of these bodies showed signs of being attacked by an animal, and there was no evidence of a struggle. The scene was eerily calm, as though whatever happened to them was swift, decisive, and overwhelmingly powerful. As the investigators delved deeper, they found something else, a photograph taken by the hikers. In it, a shadowy figure stands among the trees, partially obscured by the dense forest. Could this have been the last thing they saw before their fateful night? The figure in the photograph is ambiguous yet unsettling, too far away to identify clearly, but close enough to stir a deep, instinctual fear. One theory, rarely discussed but eerily plausible, suggests that the hikers encountered a creature, an ancient, powerful being thought to have gone extinct thousands of years ago. The creature in question? Gigantopithecus, a massive primate that once roamed Asia during the Pleistocene era. Gigantopithecus stood nearly 10 feet tall, covered in thick hair, with immense strength and size. Could it be possible that a small population of these creatures survived, hidden away in the remote forests of Siberia? If so, they would be the perfect candidates for the brutal injuries observed on the hikers, crushing bones with raw power, yet not consuming them as a predator like a bear might. The way the hikers' bodies were left untouched by teeth or claws suggests an attack not born out of hunger, but something more primal. Territorial defense, perhaps, or simply an overwhelming response to perceived threat. Imagine the terror the hikers must have felt, trapped in their tent, hearing something massive moving outside, knowing they were being hunted by something not of this world, but from a time long forgotten. Driven by sheer terror, they slashed their way out and ran into the freezing night, choosing the deadly cold over the creature that stalked them. While we may never know for certain what happened that night in 1959, the theory that the Dyatlov hikers encountered a relict hominid, a creature thought to be extinct but surviving in isolation, is compelling. The evidence from the injuries to the photograph of the shadowy figure points to the possibility that these hikers met something not of legend, but of a distant past, still roaming the most remote corners of our world. Firstly, the sheer number of sightings across the globe that match the description of this creature cannot be ignored. From the Himalayas to the forests of North America, reports of large, hairy, human-like beings, known as the Yeti in Asia and Bigfoot or Sasquatch in America, have persisted for centuries. These creatures are often described in strikingly similar terms: towering height, immense strength, and elusive nature. Could these reports all be pointing to the same creature, a relic from a distant past? Both Native American tribes and indigenous peoples in Russia have long told stories of giant, hairy beings. The Native Americans spoke of Sasquatch, a creature that roamed the forests and mountains, often described as a protector of the woods, or, in some tales, as a more malevolent being. Similarly, the Mansi people in Russia have stories of the Almas, a wild, man-like creature that dwells in the wilderness. Interestingly, when European settlers expanded into North America, they often reported finding enormous skeletal remains. These bones were thought to belong to giants, but could they have belonged to Gigantopithecus or a similar species? If such a creature once roamed the earth, it's not entirely impossible that small, isolated populations could have survived in the most remote and unexplored areas of our world. And when we consider just how much of the world remains wild and untouched, the possibility becomes even more intriguing. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let us know your thoughts on the Dyatlov Pass incident and what you believe happened on that fateful night. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world's darkest mysteries.